Okay, well, thank you all very much. Delighted to see so many old friends and new faces, and above all, to have the support of members of the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans. I think we have a true bicameral, bipartisan event here today for something that's an issue I think we can all agree on, and that's the importance of freedom of the press in Hong Kong. I want to actually start with something that people have kind of forgotten about, including the seemingly the Chinese Communist Party. This is the basic law of Hong Kong. It's the mini constitution. It was designed, developed, written in Beijing with a bit of help from Hong Kongers, and it promises a lot of freedom for Hong Kong. I just want to read you one sentence to set the tone for where we are today. Hong Kong residents shall have freedom of speech, of the press, and of publication, freedom of association, of assembly, of procession, and of demonstration. These are the promises that the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China made to the people of Hong Kong. So as we go through this event today, I want you to remember how these promises are being systematically, thoroughly broken, and how important it is that we in the United States and around the world help support and speak out for the people of Hong Kong who can't speak out for themselves anymore. So I've welcomed the members of Congress. I'll introduce them one by one. I particularly want to thank as well our NGO representatives, Anna Kwok from the Hong Kong Democracy Council and Jody Ginsburg, who's come down from New York to represent the Committee to Protect Journalists. I think we have 9 diplomatic missions in attendance, which reflects the broad international support that Jimmy Lai and others in Hong Kong have. I'd like to recognize the State Department officials in attendance, including Assistant Secretary for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, Dan Crittenbrink, who I just delighted to meet recently, and Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, Defina Rand. Reflecting, I think, the whole of government approach support for Jimmy. So we're going to play a number of videos which I think will reflect and help you understand Jimmy's story, why he's so important as a person. I mean, he's somebody I've known for more than 30 years. I've had the pleasure to write about him. I've had the pleasure to work with him as a member of his board. I've been on live stream events with him as he spoke about his passion for freedom. So I'm first going to, we're going to play a trailer from The Hong Konger, which is a great movie about Jimmy, but I think you'll get a good sense of it from the trailer. So perhaps the members would like to sit down, and then Senator Cardin will come back.
The future, which is unknown and uncertain, is still unknown for me, but it's certain.
Freedom was a very short journey for me.
He came as basically a refugee from China when he was a teenager.
I was put in the bottom of the fishing trunk, and by the afternoon, we arrived in Hong Kong. And the same night, I was taken to a factory to work as a worker. Well, we eat and sleep in a factory.
He was so poor, not highly educated.
It was a very happy time. It was a time that I know I had a future.
For a Chinese, that's like going from Kansas in black and white to Oz, where everything seems like it's possible.
As long as you wanted to work, you could make it in Hong Kong.
But British gave us all the institutions of freedom. Freedom of speech, rule of law, property right, freedom of assembly, and let our resourcefulness flourish.
They went from an incredibly poor city to a metropolis.
So I started a very small factory.
He's a classic entrepreneur.
And then I went into retailing.
Giordano was this huge brand.
If I just go on making money, it doesn't mean anything to me. If I go into the media business, I deliver choice, and choice is freedom.
Apple Daily played a very important role in Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement.
We've never had a territory of 7.5 million people who have lived and breathed their basic freedom, having that taken away from them.
Hong Konger means determination, fearlessness, the belief in human rights.
Mr. Lai insisted on marching in front where the authorities could see him.
I've been arrested 3 times.
The Hong Kong police raided the Apple Daily
It's
compound.
very likely that I will have to go to prison.
He chose to stay in Hong Kong.
Their house is firebombed.
All I had, this place gave me.
I watched this man willingly give up the life of a billionaire to become a dissident.
This is a time for sacrifice. Even if they kill me, I will have to fight to the last day.
He's probably the most famous newspaperman now jailed in the world.
I owe freedom, my life.
Well, I think that gives you a pretty good sense of the man. I'd like to invite Chairman Cardin back to the stage. Chairman Ben Cardin is, of course, Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but he's also a decades-long supporter of human rights in China, in Hong Kong, and around the world. So thank you, Senator Cardin.
Let me thank Mark Clifford, first of all, the Committee for Free Hong Kong. We appreciate your leadership. It's good to be here with my colleagues. I see my colleague, Senator Risch, is here, who is the ranking Republican on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I know a lot of my colleagues are here as well. As you pointed out, Mark, this is bipartisan. The timing is right. The United Nations General Assembly is starting this week. We've got a lot of world leaders in New York. They're there in one place. Jimmy Lai's story needs to be told. What's happening in Hong Kong needs to be put a spotlight on it. So we thank you all for being here. We take great pride in this committee room, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee room. Some great moments have happened here. In April of this year, just by way of hope, we held a vigil for Vladimir Kara-Murza, a prisoner of conscience in Russia. We didn't know whether we would ever see him alive again, poisoned twice by Mr. Putin's people in Russia, held in prison on trumped-up charges. And then 5 months later, yesterday, we celebrated his coming home to freedom. Jimmy Lai needs to be released immediately, and we will welcome him in this committee room back to freedom. So that's our clear message, that there is no reason whatsoever for him to ever have been taken into custody, and we demand his immediate release. As the video showed, there was a day when Hong Kong was a vibrant, free community. So people had hope. Jimmy Lai started as in the garment business and rose to become a very successful entrepreneur. The Daily Apple is an example of what he was able to accomplish. And then 2020, the national security law passed for Hong Kong, taking away freedom for the people of Hong Kong, contrary to the commitments that were made not only to the people of Hong Kong, but to the international community. Jimmy Lai's arrested on trumped-up charges, sentenced to long sentences for no reason whatsoever. But as we point out, he's not alone. He's not the only person being persecuted by China and by Hong Kong. There's over 1,000 being held today, including the Hong Kong 47. And we fight for all to be released from this oppression. So our message is very clear. We want him released immediately. We want China to live up to the commitments it made to the international community and the people of Hong Kong. Sebastian, we want you to know we will not give up hope. We believe in putting a spotlight on this, and we will continue to put a spotlight on this. We'll continue to point out what China and Hong Kong is doing is contrary to international human rights laws, but contrary to their own commitments they gave on Hong Kong. We're with you, and we're going to stay with you. And we're going to make it clear we will not rest until Jimmy Lai and the others are released. And with that, let me introduce his son, Sebastian.
The first time I realized I was taller than my dad, I was 13. But I always knew that I wasn't stronger than him. To this day, I'm still discovering the weight he continues to carry. My dad once joked that he would like to drop everything but the clothes on his back and go around busking and singing. I remember this memory as a child because of the way he smiled. There was a sadness in it. Looking back, I think he knew his commitment to democracy in Hong Kong would lead him down a much harder path. For 30 years, my father held his course with a smile and a sense of humor. His newspaper, the Apple Daily, held power to account in Hong Kong for 26 years until it was forced to shut down. It championed the press freedoms my dad knew protect all other liberties. Once, when asked why he chose to fight, he said, "I just don't want to be a coward. It's not that complicated." He never once wavered in his principle. Long before they imprisoned him, they tried to intimidate him. They tailed him incessantly. They threw pig guts at him. They threw Molotov cocktails at our house. They tried to financially cripple his newspaper. He wouldn't bend. And so they weaponized the law against him. When Beijing passed the Hong Kong national security law, everyone around him told him to leave. My dad had the choice to leave, to protect his own freedom, or stay and protect his staff and those who campaigned at his side. My dad sacrificed his own freedom that day to stay and act as a lightning rod. In doing so, he is now taking on the full wrath of an authoritarian regime. For his principles and his courage, the Hong Kong government have shackled my father. For his commitment to freedom, they are torturing him. At the age of almost 77, they keep him in solitary confinement. He swelters in 100-degree heat in a cell devoid of any sunlight. For his strong Catholic faith, he is denied communion. He was recently too sick to attend court. They, the Hong Kong authorities, keeping him in jail, are slowly but surely killing him. Make no mistakes, they are killing him because of his commitment to democracy. My father symbolizes the promise of freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to speak, and live free of fear and compromise. But my dad is also someone who is living out the duty of the free, the duty to fight and protect freedom whenever and wherever it is being threatened. I call on those who understand the same duty to act now and to save them before it is too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. And I think we should all recognize the courage of Sebastian, who has to live outside of Hong Kong, can't see his father, is really the family's voice outside of Hong Kong. It's a heavy burden on Sebastian and everyone in the family as well. So we're going to see some videos for a couple of minutes, and then we'll hear some remarks from our members. So thank you.
You cannot tell the story of my father without telling the story of Hong Kong. Hong Kong gave my father the freedoms to thrive. And now he is in prison because he decided to stay in Hong Kong and defend that very freedom.
If you are living in Hong Kong, you must have seen the Apple Daily. It is this news outlet that would always monitor the government closely and amplify pro-democracy voices. The Hong Kong authorities chose Apple Daily to kill because they see it as the signature to press freedom, because they see Jimmy Lai, a pro-democracy entrepreneur with global influence, a threat to CCP's rule, because they want to show its supporters and journalists the red line so that they will stop speaking out. Today, there are still independent press in Hong Kong trying to fill up the space left by Apple Daily, despite government surveillance. Their reporting allowed us to learn what's happening in Hong Kong, especially in the court where political trials continue to happen, including the case involving the Hong Kong 47. To support them, we need the US and international response to hold the CCP accountable, to press for the release of political prisoners, and to amplify the voice of Hong Kongers.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Member Senator Jim Risch, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Thank you very much for all your advocacy and work.
Well, thank you all for coming here today, and I'm honored to be with you, Sebastian, today. We appreciate your work to raise awareness of your father's case and to free him. The treatment of Jimmy Lai by the Chinese and Hong Kong governments is shameful and a travesty of justice. Mr. Lai has done nothing wrong. He is in prison for peaceful support of democracy and for publishing a newspaper, nothing more. Holding anyone, especially a 76-year-old man with health issues, in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison for over 23 hours a day is cruel and inhumane. So is China's denial of Mr. Lai's access to independent physicians and specialized medical care for treatment of diabetes and its long-term complications. This highlights just how little the Chinese government values life. Make no mistake, when the Chinese Communist Party goes after someone, it takes away everything that person cherishes and values to break their will. But those here today can testify to Mr. Lai's strength of faith and his character. This is a critical time. It is more urgent than ever that the international community support Mr. Lai through every means possible. We should all honor his son, his family, and his lawyers for their bravery. Jimmy Lai should be released immediately and unconditionally. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Risch. I think it's very powerfully said. And as Sebastian said, it's not a metaphor that his father's being shackled by the Chinese. I mean, he's literally being shackled when he's moved to court every day. He's put inside a cage in an armored vehicle surrounded by a phalanx of police in shackles. This is what they do to a 76-year-old man. And I think, as Senator Risch said, it shows how little the Chinese communists value life. I'd next like to welcome Representative Young Kim, who's on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and is the chair of the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee. Thank you very much, Representative Kim.
Thank you, Mark. I represent California's 40th Congressional District in Southern California. We have a lot of constituents who care about what's happening in Hong Kong. And what we're doing here, obviously, we are amplifying the voices that needs to be told. And I would like to thank the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Foreign Relations, and the activism that you are doing to give voice for the people that are voiceless. And we're so happy, Sebastian, that you are here to really put the face to the name and to the cause that we're fighting for together. And we are all here to send a bipartisan, bicameral message from the United States Congress that we support the fundamental freedoms of Hong Kongers. To that end, I'm standing here in the committee room for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I want to thank Senator Cardin and Senator Risch for leading today's event to recognize and honor Jimmy Lai for his brave fight for freedom and human rights in the face of Chinese Communist Party's oppression. We're all here sending one message and one message alone to the Communist Chinese Party. Release Jimmy Lai, and today, when the world is watching, release him now. He doesn't deserve to be kept in captivity. Nearly 4 years ago, Jimmy Lai was arrested and imprisoned in Hong Kong for violating Beijing's national security law. That law gave the Chinese Communist Party endless power to prosecute, to intimidate, and jail pro-democracy Hong Kong activists. And Beijing's coercion went further beyond that enactment of Article 23 in March. which was a devastating blow to the peaceful pro-democracy movement. The CCP's authoritarian reach extends far outside Hong Kong borders. And we must remember that a threat to freedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere. So as chairwoman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee Subcommittee on Indo-Pacific, I'm working tirelessly to hold CCP and those who enable the regime accountable for repressing freedom in Hong Kong. That's why I'm proud to lead the Hong Kong Sanctions Act, which is a bipartisan resolution condemning Chinese Communist Party's crackdowns on Hong Kong. Mine is a bill and there is a resolution. I want to make sure there's a clarity there. Because I want people to know we're not going to be silenced. We refuse to be silenced. And we will always be a loud voice for human rights around the world. And I want to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in the House of Representatives and senators on both sides of the aisle when we work harder to bring Jimmy Lai home. Senator Cardin, we want him to be here, okay, in the Senate chamber, but we will bring him to our House chamber as well, and we will celebrate his release. But we can't let up. We need to continue to speak out and speak out for the voiceless people. And thank you so much for your activism. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Representative Young Kim, for your support. And I know you have another hearing to go to, so appreciate your staying here for this. And we'll look forward to celebrating in the House as well as in the Senate. I'd next like to welcome Representative Jim McGovern, who's former chair of the China Commission and, again, a longtime advocate for human rights in China, in Hong Kong, and around the world. Representative McGovern.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to recognize my colleagues here, Senators Cardin and Risch, and Senator Merkley, Representative Raskin, Representative Smith, as well as Representative Young Kim, and you're going to hear from Speaker Pelosi. I want to also thank Representative Raskin for advocating for Jimmy Lai through the Defending Freedoms Project, the Prisoner of Conscience initiative coordinated by the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission that I co-chair along with Congressman Smith. But the record is clear. Jimmy Lai is in prison because he chose to stand up and speak out for democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. The PRC and the Hong Kong government can call him a criminal till the cows come home. But we can see, and the world knows, that all he was doing was exercising his most basic, fundamental human rights. All of us wake up every day to such a tsunami of news that sometimes it can be hard to stay focused on the stories of the people suffering repression for doing the right thing. The most important message that we are sending today to Jimmy Lai is that he is not forgotten. We have not forgotten him. We will not forget him. We will not stop advocating for his immediate and unconditional release. And we will continue to stand with Jimmy's son, Sebastian, who is bravely leading the fight for his father's freedom and that of all Hong Kongers. And let me conclude with a message for the government of the People's Republic of China and its newest puppet, the Hong Kong government. Criminalizing the exercise of human rights is a sign of weakness. It is a sign of fear. It means you don't think you can win the battles of ideas, the battle for the hearts and minds of your people. It means you are elevating power over the well-being of your people. What has happened in Hong Kong over the last few years is a tragedy, but make no mistake, the story is still being written. We will not forget. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So many great advocates for human rights gathered in this room. I'd next like to recognize and invite up Chris Smith, Representative Chris Smith. There he is. I know we squeezed you in a little in the back there, Congressman. Of course, Chris is a longtime supporter of human rights around the world with a particular focus on China and many of the abuses, and now runs the CECC along with Jeff Merkley, we'll hear from later. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you for the great work you're doing on behalf of people in Hong Kong, Jimmy Lai in particular. And a year ago in May, we heard from Sebastian at a hearing of our Congressional Executive China Commission. And I remember thinking throughout the entire hearing, what an amazing man this is, that the apple did not fall far from the tree, that he's a chip off the old block, extremely, extraordinarily articulate in making the case, but above all, passionate and full of faith and full of strength. And you have been such an inspiration. At the time, remember, you admonished the UK to do more, because they were sitting on their hands and not doing much to agitate for the release of your father. So you are really an amazing man. I know your father knows it, but he needs to know it even more. We all so deeply respect you. You could be Jimmy Lai Jr. for the way you are just doing just an amazing job. Great to see Ben Cardin, the full committee chairman. He and I have been friends for many, many, many years. And of course, Jim just left. We worked together on both the China Commission as well as on the Lantos Commission. You know, injustice need not be forever. And I'm one of those who believe, and I know, Ben, we all believe this with all of our hearts, that the time will come, and I hope it'll come soon, if we are resolute, if we use every lever at our disposal, every way of trying to influence Xi Jinping and his really murderous Chinese Communist Party to let your father go and to ease up and to end this horrible repression of Hong Kong and, of course, all the rest of China. In 2014, I introduced the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. All the China hands at the State Department said, you're a solution in search of a problem. It's not a problem. I said, you don't understand Xi Jinping and what really happens inside his heart as he represses and puts people in prison. And it was only a matter of time before not only the national security law, which is draconian, everybody in this room, every single one of us, for just being here, could be indicted under that law and get a multi-year sentence. Some of us, like Ben and others, we could all get life. And you would have lifetimes too. I mean, that's how wrong and unjust Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party really is. I want to thank Nancy Pelosi. She's the one who made sure we brought that bill up back in about 5 years ago. But it was too late in a way, because so much had already happened. But thank you for taking that strong stand. We had so many great dissidents with us that day, and we were always thinking about your father. He could have escaped, and I'll end with this. He could have left, but he chose to stay and to fight. And he will be honored forever in a free China. God bless you.
As the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I'm going to take the prerogative of introducing our next speaker. Nancy Pelosi has been the hero in our country on behalf of the people of China. She has spoken out for universal rights. She's been a champion for values. She's taken on some of the most difficult people in the world, and she always comes out ahead during those encounters. I am very proud of Nancy Pelosi because her roots are in Baltimore. We recognize that some people think she lives in California, so we'll let that go. But we are so honored to have the speaker here with us today, Nancy Pelosi, for her incredible record of public service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being a leader for human rights throughout the world and your service in the House, of which we take great pride. And that's how you came to the, well, not after being Speaker in the the Maryland, I keep getting them mixed up, the Maryland General Assembly. We're so proud of Ben Cardin, but he has just been, had his focus on human rights and democracy throughout the world. And I just heard Chris Smith talk about his involvement in all this. What's beautiful about this issue is that it has always been strongly, unequivocally bipartisan in the House and in the Senate. To be here with Mr. Chairman and ranking, well, you call him something else in the Senate, what do you call him, Vice Chair or something? Mr. Fish, and so many others. Sebastian, your father is a hero to us. There's so many people, 1,500 imprisoned by the Hong Kong government, the Beijing government really, and every one of them is important to us. But I heard something quite different when Jimmy was arrested, and it was they arrested a journalist. They arrested a journalist. So that visibility has raised the visibility of all of the other prisoners who are there. The Chinese government likes to say, or any totalitarian government, one of their most exquisite forms, and I use that word precisely, of torture, meaning specific, is that they tell people nobody even remembers you're here or why you are here. So why don't you just give up and confess to whatever they create, and then you'll still be here, but nonetheless. And that is something that today we are saying to the world, to the Chinese government, to the Chinese Communist Party, that we know, not only do we remember, we exalt, we lift up the sacrifice of Jimmy Lai in all of this. You have been such an advocate for your dad. We've had these conversations before, but now in a very strong bipartisan way in public about it. The laws that are passed in Hong Kong depriving people of freedom, violating the basic law and the rest of that are not even to be considered laws. They're called great, great restrictions and violations of anything civil or decent in terms of government's relationship to its people. Chris, you and I have been in this fight for a long time in the House in a very bipartisan way. This morning at a meeting we talked about Frank Wolf and his... but the very idea that the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, can exert its influence in crushing the culture of Tibet, crushing the democracy in Hong Kong. And we had this fight in the 90s. We kept saying to the Brits, be careful, we don't believe they will honor the basic law. Oh, yes, they will, and that 50 years, they're going to honor it for 50 years, one country, two systems. Well, that didn't seem to pan out, did it? So, again, thank you to all of the people who are here, and I know that you've heard from Jody and Mark and Anna and others, or will. We're so proud of Jeff Merkley in terms of the commission, as well as Jim McGovern in that regard, and others, Jamie Raskin, I don't know if he's been here and the rest, but Representative Kim as well. But so many people speaking out on this in the House, in the Senate, on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, in the private sector, and again, in the world of journalism, freedom of speech, the freedom of speech is the biggest defender of democracy because it sheds light on what is happening. And that's why Jimmy was so courageous to do it, because he knew what the consequences could be, because they knew how powerful his voice has been, is, and will continue to be in the future. So it's an honor for me to be with each and every one of you and to the others who have been working on this issue. We just passed a bill a couple of days ago, well, the end of last week, in the House, so hopefully it will pass the Senate soon, about Hong Kong as well. But again, always in a very bicameral, bipartisan way. Thank you, Hong Kong, for bringing us together. We owe you a great deal. Your democracy is important to us. I just make one more point. Did I say that already? One more point, and that is the Chinese Communist Party is reaching out of China and Hong Kong and beating up people who show up to demonstrate for democracy in Hong Kong. In the United States, I can vouch for that, in San Francisco and in London. I've met with folks there who have been victimized by that. We must say to the Chinese government, we disagree with what you're doing in your own country. We will fight it globally, but you have no business suppressing freedom of speech in our own country when we talk about democracy in Hong Kong. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you. Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Chairman, and Vice Chair, see, we say ranking member in the House. I don't know. They have different terminology in the Senate, but we're so glad that Senator Fish is so much a part of this as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Speaker Emerita Pelosi. I think your presence here does underscore this bipartisan, bicameral support. As you say, Hong Kong has brought us together. We can all agree on this. And your 3 decades of leadership, you've been consistent in your focus on Chinese human rights. Whoever thought we'd have to worry about Hong Kong like this? We have one more member, by no means the last, but by no means the least, and that's Senator Jeff Merkley, again, longtime supporter of human rights in China and in Hong Kong, co-chair of the CECC, one of the 2 China commissions, and a great friend to Hong Kong democracy advocates. Senator Merkley.
Well, again, a tremendous thank you to you, Speaker Pelosi, for ringing the bells of freedom around the world, but specifically fighting for those bells to ring in China and to ring in Hong Kong. They rang before in Hong Kong. Let's make them ring again. And that's why we're here today. And I wanted to reemphasize that story about the Basic Law, that it guaranteed to Hong Kongers residents shall have freedom of speech, of the press, of publication, freedom of association, of procession, and of demonstration, and the right and freedom to form and join trade unions and to strike. That's the Basic Law. That's powerful. Your father sought to utilize those freedoms in quest of a better world. And what happened? He was arrested under the national security law 1 month after it was enacted, released on bail, arrested again, and then sentenced for peaceful protest. Basic Law guaranteed protest. It guaranteed procession. And then he was sentenced to another 14 months for his involvement in unauthorized assembly, specifically Basic Law, freedom of assembly and freedom of association. And then in 2021, arrested for an additional 13 months. Just the Chinese government was determined to keep his voice from resonating throughout the land, because it's a powerful voice, a voice for freedom. And then came 2022, when he was convicted of fraud related to publication by the Apple Daily. And yet, here we are, freedom of press and freedom of publication. This Basic Law has been put into the shredder by the national security law. We have seen freedom trampled in every single dimension. And we're here to say we cannot accept this. We must continue to speak to it. We must continue to publicize it. We are 2 houses, we are 2 parties. We are united, however, in striving to restore freedom, make those bells of freedom ring once again. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We'll do a group picture, but hang on. We've got some more speakers. So, Speaker Emerita, should we get everyone up here for the photo? Quick group picture as we're up here. With the members and our State Department, our other speakers? In front of the podium? Do you want us in front of the podium? Okay, sign, okay. Okay.
Excuse me.
Good. Thank you very much. We are going to move to a few videos, a few more personal messages. and then we'll have our final speakers.
Hello, I'm Bei Feng, President and CEO of Radio Free Asia. In August 2020, pro-democracy activist and media mogul Jimmy Lai was unjustly arrested in Hong Kong. 4 years later, Lai is still detained. His long-delayed trial reflects an ongoing crackdown on basic freedoms and rule of law in this once autonomous city. This March, new stringent legislation forced RFA to close its own physical bureau there for the safety of its journalists. Hong Kong's crackdown on independent media is part of a growing global threat to press freedom. At RFA, exiled journalism is part of our mission as a news organization. Yet in many of our coverage regions, where governments already censor media, press freedom has declined even further, making this critical work increasingly dangerous. Lai's legacy remains a beacon in today's dire media environment. On the anniversary of his imprisonment, we ask the international community to join us in standing in support of Jimmy Lai and the rights of journalists around the world. RFA strongly condemns his unjust detention and calls for his immediate and unconditional release. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anouk Weir, and I work at Hong Kong Watch. My organization monitors human rights in Hong Kong, including political prisoner cases. We are advocating for Jimmy Lai's freedom and freedom for all political prisoners in Hong Kong. Jimmy Lai has been a peaceful businessman and pro-democracy advocate, which is an inspiration to us all. He deserves to be free and celebrated, not behind bars. We thank the U.S. and especially members of the Congress for speaking out about Jimmy Lai and other political prisoners in Hong Kong. We urge you to continue doing so and continue raising these cases in meetings until Hong Kong people have the rights and freedoms we deserve.
I'd like to invite up the CEO of the Committee to Protect Journalists, Jody Ginsburg, longtime Reuters journalist and now the head of an organization that's one of many media organizations fighting on Jimmy's behalf, and a particularly powerful and effective one.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for this important invitation. So, as we've heard today, the case of Jimmy Lai is not an outlier. It's not an anomaly. It is a symptom and an emblem. It is symptomatic and emblematic of the rapid democratic decline undergone by Hong Kong over the past decade, and in particular, since Beijing imposed its national security law in 2020. A free press is, as the United States knows well, and as Speaker Pelosi already articulated this afternoon, the cornerstone of democracy. A leading indicator of the health of any democracy is its treatment of the press. Hong Kong's treatment of Jimmy Lai and of independent media more generally demonstrates that this is an administration that is no longer interested in even a semblance of democratic norms. Some dozen independent media outlets in Hong Kong have become defunct since the introduction of the security law 4 years ago. This includes Apple Daily, the news organization founded by Mr. Lai, as well as, Stan News, which, like Apple Daily, has been charged with conspiring to publish seditious publications. Hong Kong's own security chief, Chris Tang, has publicly accused the Hong Kong Journalists Association of siding with pro-democracy protesters, and China's state-backed Global Times has labeled that association disingenuous and dangerous. Let's be clear, such an environment in which journalists, editors, and media owners are jailed, intimidated, and smeared simply for doing work that is expected of a free press in a democracy, and we have many press here today, the work of holding power to account, such an environment is actively and deliberately chilling freedom of expression in Hong Kong. Journalists report growing self-censorship, and lawyers representing journalists have been subjected to intimidation. Earlier this month, the UN Secretary General raised concerns about reprisals against Mr. Lai, his son Sebastian, whom we have heard from this afternoon, and his international legal team. The legal team's family members have been threatened over email and social media, while the legal team members themselves have been sent death and rape threats, as well as suffering repeated attempts to hack their email and bank accounts, all for simply representing a media owner, a journalist, an editor, a freedom fighter. Such actions must not go unchecked. The United States is rightly proud of its defense of press freedom, which is vital not just for democracy, but for a free flow of information that ensures markets can function freely and fairly. We at the Committee to Protect Journalists are grateful to the Senate's Committee on Foreign Relations for publicly supporting Mr. Lai and backing sanctions against those involved in his ongoing prosecution and persecution. Such actions send a clear message to Hong Kong authorities that their actions will not be tolerated by the United States and the international community. Importantly, and I really want to stress this as we head towards UN General Assembly Week, these actions serve as a warning to other countries engaged in a similar attack on a free press. And that's crucial because, as I alluded to in my opening remarks, sadly, the case of Jimmy Lai is not an outlier nor an anomaly, not in Hong Kong, nor in the world more generally. We at CPJ have documented record numbers of journalists in prison over the past 3 years, and growing numbers of those are in countries that are supposedly democracies, and in countries that enjoy warm diplomatic and trading relationships with the United States. It is incumbent on the United States to show that there are economic and political costs for countries that limit press freedom, and especially those that use and abuse the law to silence journalists. Your actions as a committee, your actions as representatives, as senators, your actions and commitments in this crucial moment are vital for Mr. Lai, for a free press, and for democracy worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome Anna Kwok, a Hong Kong native, former student activist, and now executive director of the Hong Kong Democracy Council, which is doing a remarkable job of fighting for freedom in Hong Kong, of tabulating the political prisoners, the over 1,888 political prisoners at last count that Hong Kong has racked up in the last couple of years. It's an unbelievable number, and the work that Anna and her group do are terrific. So thank you, Anna.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cardin, Ranking Member Risch, Senator Merkley at the SFRC, and Speaker Emerita Pelosi, along with Representatives McGovern, Smith, and Kim in the House. 1,888. This is the number of political prisoners in Hong Kong since 2019. In just 5 years, Hong Kong has come from being known as this international financial hub, the city of million-strong protests, and the beacon of hope for democracy, to now, we are a city of political prisoners. We are a society of media censorship, and we are a proxy for exerting China's foreign influence around the world. The rapid intensification in political repression is distinct. Only 2 countries, Burma and Belarus, actually, have taken more political prisoners in the same time period. The Hong Kong government has put generations of pro-democracy leaders and believers and fighters behind bars. The 1,888 include longtime advocates like Jimmy Lai here, like Chow Hung-tong, as well as new generation activists like Joshua Wong, Gwyneth Ho, Owen Chow, as well as anonymous protesters who were students, clerks, professors, retail workers, and I myself as well actually was once an anonymous protester. We must remember that the fight for Hong Kong is a citywide, a multi-generational, and a diverse fight. However, as different as all our backgrounds are, the reason behind all our sacrifices, behind Jimmy Lai's sacrifices, is the same. It is actually the aspiration for a free and a democratic Hong Kong, one that was promised to us, one that we deserve to have, but one that was never delivered to us. In the past few years, the Hong Kong government has arrested thousands of people and enacted draconian laws like the National Security Law and the Article 23. The Hong Kong government must be held accountable for all the political repression and human rights abuses it has conducted. And through it all, through the past few years, I really want to thank Chairman Cardin for his long-standing support for Hong Kong, going back to being the original Senate co-sponsor for the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act when it was first introduced 10 years ago during the Umbrella Movement. His greatest legacy in foreign policy making includes his authorship of the Magnitsky Act, which has offered the framework for imposing targeted sanctions on human rights offenders in Hong Kong. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has been an absolutely indispensable body to passing important Hong Kong and China policies over the years. And I'm very pleased to be working with the team today, and we are still working to fight for Hong Kong. As an effort to continue the developing Hong Kong foreign policy in response to the rapid changes to the city, our community is currently advocating for the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office Certification Act, which passed both the SFRC last year and the full House of Representatives just 2 weeks ago with overwhelming support. The bill will reevaluate the status of the 3 outposts of the Hong Kong government in Washington, the city, New York, and San Francisco. They spread propaganda for the Chinese government. They potentially engage in transnational repression, harming the safety of people like me, and they spend millions of dollars. They assist the spending of millions of dollars to counter-lobby against human rights legislation here on Capitol. I therefore hope that the legislation can be brought to the Senate floor for swift consideration and passage. I thank all members present for being supportive of this much-needed action. At the same time, I do also want to applaud the chairman's effort in championing the Human Rights Defenders Protection Act of 2024. This is a piece of legislation that aims to help human rights offenders to remain safe as they continue to defend human rights and freedoms around the world. As I end my remark, I would like to thank allies here for always standing with Hong Kong. Your partnership and your collaboration with us actually helps bring a light and hope that is very much needed for Hong Kongers who are still inside the city, still persisting, and still trying to continue the fight until this very day. We must continue urging the immediate release of political prisoners. We must continue striving to hold the Hong Kong and Beijing governments accountable. Hong Kong should be free, and democracy should be enjoyed by everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, Anna, thank you for your remarks, and above all, thank you for all the leadership you've shown. Anna is one of 13 people who has a bounty on her head, $1 million Hong Kong dollars. That's about 130,000 US dollars. If you can bring her back and subject her to prosecution. I mean, this is just outrageous, this sort of transnational repression that you, my colleague Francis Hoy, and a dozen others are undergoing. So we started with some videos from people, and we're going to finish with a couple others just to give you a sense of the diverse voices, and we'll finish up with a few remarks after that. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. Even Asia for his.
Hello.
Free speech is a human rights and.
Hello, my name is Bahram Siddash. I have been a reporter for 5 years with RFA Uyghur Service. I am grateful to be able to help shine a light on unjust detention of Jamie Lai and other reporters who have been harassed or persecuted for reporting the truth. My own father, Qurban Mahmud, was a Uyghur journalist in Xinjiang. He was arrested in 2017, along with thousands of other Uyghur intellectuals who were among the first victims of China's crackdown, as Radio Free Asia first reported. Sebastian, I know how you might feel seeing your father in prison for reporting the truth. We must continue to stand for free press and an end to unjust detention of reporters like my father and Sebastian's Jamie Lai.
I'm Carmen Lau, a former elected district councillor in Hong Kong. As we stand in solidarity with the political prisoners and countless others fighting for their voices to be heard, we must recognize that the struggle is part of a global fight. Hong Kong, once a beacon of press freedom in the Asia Pacific, now ranks among the least free across the globe. In just 5 years, the number of political prisoners in Hong Kong has surged from a few to over 1,800. I had the privilege to working with and becoming close friends with some of those now known as the Hong Kong 47. Their courage and commitment inspire me daily. When the freedom to speak is suppressed, so too is the opportunity for progress and justice. A free press is essential in amplifying silenced voices, bringing the stories to the world, and reminding us all that without the right to speak freely, democracy withers. We must continue to support those who risk everything to protect this fundamental freedom.
I think that gives you a good sense of the range of Hong Kongers, and I think we've had an extraordinary afternoon, again, bicameral, bipartisan, celebrating, remembering, certainly one of the most remarkable people that I've ever met. But of course, it's not just Jimmy. It's people like Anna's comrades back in Hong Kong. It's the 7.5 million people living in what was once one of the freest places in the world, and one where I believe that most people still support democracy. Every time Hong Kongers had a chance to vote, from the first territory-wide elections in 1991, in the closing days of British colonial rule, to the last elections in 2019, roughly 6 out of 10 people always voted for the pro-democracy candidate. So we don't want to demonize or forget the 7.5 million people who are in Hong Kong who still want freedom. But it's incumbent on us to speak out for them and to speak out above all for those who are in prison. And I would say, speaking personally, for I think one of the most courageous of them all, a guy who could have left, who's given up much of his fortune, who's given up his businesses, who's separated from his family. I mean, Sebastian just wants to bring his father home. Jimmy is a British citizen, but he's also, in a way, a citizen of the world. And he's a man who came to Hong Kong. He came to Hong Kong as a boy, escaping famine in China at the age of 12, a famine that killed tens of millions of people. And he found the freedom of food in Hong Kong. He found the freedom to make a business. And then he found the freedom of democracy. And finally, the freedom of his Catholic faith and of his love for his wife, Teresa, Sebastian's mother. So I really want to thank you for your support of Jimmy and all of those unjustly imprisoned and oppressed in Hong Kong. So thank you again. Yep, thank you. Yeah.